There we go. Oh gosh, that was not a good start. Hold on. There we go. That's better. Yo, yo, yo. What is going on, my beautiful brothers and sisters, fellow radiators of love? My name is Jamal Pope, aka J Phoenix, and welcome to this week's installment of Cosmic Convergence. We are going to be covering Wednesday the 12th through Tuesday the 18th, this June of 2024, which is already flying by. We are already almost halfway through 2024. Did I say 2025? I meant 2024. Anyways, hopefully you guys are having a wonderful start to your week. Definitely have some good things to talk about this week, and let's just go ahead and hop right into it, right? Since I already showed you guys the thumbnail for this Cosmic Convergence, breaking the spell. Now, why do I have this up? Well, it has a lot to do with all of these energies in Gemini. This stellium in Gemini with Mercury, the Sun, and Venus getting ready to square off to Neptune. Now, I found this was a pretty interesting image, and I'll kind of take you through my overall thought process of these images. So, let's see. So here was the first image I came up with. And as you can see, it has a puppeteer. And he's working on all these different people, and they're all kind of, I can't tell if they're arguing. They're supposed to be arguing, but they're like supposed to be arguing with each other, not realizing that they're being controlled by the same person, right? So, because when I was looking at the transits for this week, and I was trying to figure out, it's like, it does really feel like there's a potential for the anesthesia to be increased, for the propaganda to be increased, and for us to be confused into thinking that we are each other's rivals and enemies, when really we all have a common, I guess you would say, enemy or threat or entity that's trying to control us, if you will. Now, this can play off on larger scales, but this can also play off in, your own personal life. It doesn't necessarily have to be some grand conspiracy by the government. This can play out in your life as a situation that kind of has you under a spell and maybe another person under a spell, and you are at odds with this individual, not realizing that neither of you are really autonomous in this. You both are under some sort of current, some sort of influence, and not even realizing that you're being controlled by the same thing. If you were to realize the strings that were attached to you and that they emanate from the same place, probably wouldn't be arguing. But, this still gave me the vibe of like being fully controlled by someone else, right? So then I came across this image, and like this image is alright. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, because when I was thinking initially for the thumbnail, I was thinking like a puppeteer, like a puppet master, So this one came up, and I'm like, kind of, not really. They don't really necessarily look like they're arguing. Honestly, one of them just looks like the guy in the black jacket. Looks like he's just kind of annoyed with the other dude. So that wasn't it. Here it is, and then I started going, okay, what about a magician? What about a magician that casts a spell on two people that are on the same team and forcing them to fight each other? So that's kind of where I came up. It's kind of where I decided to take this. Now, this one was kind of interesting. I mean, they're both yelling at each other. This dude, of course, is looking pretty crazy. The magician, his fingers are looking kind of effed up. I will say that, and they're definitely very veiny, if you will, in their hands, stuff like that. But I thought it was interesting how one of them's holding like the red energy, like the orangish energy, and one's holding like the bluish energy, So that could represent two sides of the same coin. It could represent like, the sun and the moon, if you will. It could represent those different aspects, the masculine, the feminine. It could represent those different things, and how these things are being pitted against each other, if you will. This image I actually really, really liked. This was the image that I wanted to use as the thumbnail. it shows these two individuals. They are obviously a part of some sort of school, right? Some sort of like magic school, kind of like Harry Potter-esque, whatever. And you have like this dude over here who's probably, maybe not even the headmaster, probably not the headmaster, but probably like higher up, you know what I'm saying? Probably watches over like the incoming students, and he's like forcing them to kind of like fight each other. One has red eyes, one has blue eyes. So once again, it kind of does bring this whole masculine versus feminine, the you know fire versus water kind of energy. Although in this case, it's really water and air, considering that's Pisces and Gemini. But with the sun being in Gemini, it does bring some fire to the spot. And Jupiter is here in Gemini as well, so that does bring some fire to that particular realm. The reason why I wasn't able to use this is because Canva wouldn't let me. Canva straight up would not let me use this image. Like whenever I tried to put it on there and I tried to download it, it would take forever to download. And it would not work. So we came to this. And honestly, I'm very grateful. I'm grateful that Canva didn't let it work because honestly, this one makes the most sense to me. Let me explain. The magician is still casting a spell on these two individuals, forcing them to fight. But unlike a lot of the other ones, they are looking at each other with such determination. Almost as if they are breaking the spell that the magician has them under. But it's like they're kind of agreeing to play along with the narrative just to fool the magician. So this is really the trick to this week, is that, things may appear, you may appear to have an enemy this week. You may appear to be under a spell this week, but you may come into contact with those that are also kind of flying under the radar. And that's kind of the feeling I got with this image. There, you could take it as the magician is controlling the two individuals. They're on the same team and they're getting ready to fight. But another way to take it is that maybe these people were under the control of the magician, but now they are regaining their autonomy, if you will, and they are having this sort of psychic connection between the two of them. They are deciding to play along. They're deciding to fly under the radar. And it's so interesting because I literally just got finished watching the movie Divergent. And it's weird because, my dad's been talking to me about this movie for a while. I knew about the books, but I never read the books. And I swore I hadn't seen the movie. But then as I was watching it, there were scenes in there that I had recognized. So I'm like, did I watch this movie? I can't remember if I actually watched it or not. I feel like I might have. But nonetheless, watching that movie, there were moments where, now I won't spoil too much, but there were moments where the two main characters, in many ways, were engaged in this exact situation, where they had to fake being each other's enemies so they can scoot by, fly under the radar, until they could find the advantage to take control of the situation. And that's why I'm glad that this was the image I settled on for the thumbnail, because, and that's why I put the question mark there. It's like, are you going to break the spell of what's happening right now? And here's the thing too. It's when I say that the propaganda is going to be at an all-time, is going to be revved up, the anesthesia is going to be revved up. These people that are doing these things, they know astrology. So they know what transits to act on, because they know what influences are going to have the greatest effect when they do certain things. Now, don't think for a second that these people don't know astrology. They may shit on astrology, in like, outwardly public view sort of thing, but a lot of these people practice it, or they have astrologers that they have their own astrologers. I think there's a quote that millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And they use the astrology to see what the influences are, and then they will do certain things based off of that to influence other people. Now, if you are adept, if you are divergent, if you will, you can scoot around these things potentially. But I think we are coming into a time right now where the spell is breaking. It's not fully broken, but the spell is breaking. It's not going to fully break though, because we still have this Pluto that's going to go back into Capricorn, and they're going to throw their Hail Marys and shit. But it will come back into Aquarius, and then especially when Uranus comes into Gemini, things are really going to be popping. So that's what I got for you guys this week as far as why the image. It is in many ways a spell could be cast on people today or this week to have us fighting amongst ourselves, not realizing that we can break the spell. And we don't have to be under this particular spell. We don't have to live by someone else's ideology. And also that this is a time to kind of come up with our game plans. This is a time for us to actually come together, not separate. There is this push to separate more and more so people can become calloused in their views and calloused in their echo chambers so as to not allow any outside influence to come in and make you think differently. Because I was thinking about this yesterday. We humans, we have always had our echo chambers, if you will. But we have never been in a world where we built algorithms that would throw the echo chamber in your face so much. As in, it's like I can just look up football, right, on Google. And then suddenly I'm going to get blasted with a bunch of football stuff, even when I'm not looking for football stuff. So we live in a society with algorithms that are like, oh, you like this thing? Let me throw more of this at you. Right? Now, humans are they're familial creatures. We like familiarity, right? So we are going to seek out the comfort of those things, and we're going to seek out things that remind us of who we are. But there is positivity in knowing and learning about differing opinions. But when you live in a society that is championing, trying to say that word, pushing people into their various factions. That was another thing in the movie Divergent. It was like faction before blood. That's something that's definitely happening right now. That's definitely happening right now in the world. But people are like forgetting their humanity in many ways. Hopefully this can be a week where you can break the spell and realize that we are all human. You know, but I do feel like we are being pushed to such extremes. We have been pushed into such extreme corners, and we are become so calloused within these groups that any differing opinion, we see that as a threat. Some people see it as a threat to their very lives, where you start calling language violence. And yeah, that may sound crazy, but this is Gemini season still. Gemini is mutable air, so it is language. It is communication. So, let's drill down, shall we? Now, we're going to be covering, of course, this day by day, starting on Wednesday the 12th here. So, as you can see with this one, this is mainly going to be a lot of the moon making aspects, but it's also going to be Mercury that's making a pretty big aspect as well. And we're going to be feeling this throughout the day, essentially. So we have the moon that shifts into Virgo. Now, what's interesting about when the moon shifts into Virgo is that it creates a yod. Now, what is a yod? Well, a yod is what happens when two planets are in sextile to each other, right? And those two planets are aspecting another planet at 150 degrees. So it creates a sort of isosceles triangle, if you will. So that's going to be between Pluto, Neptune, and the moon that this is creating. Because Pluto and Neptune are separated by about 60 degrees. And then, of course, you have the moon here which is going to be aspecting both of them. Now, it's a loose yod. It's not the strongest yod, but I want to include it mainly because Neptune is at the final degree of the entire zodiac, like edge of the edge of the edge, and then we have Pluto, which is retrograde at 1 degree of Aquarius, this is massive as well, right? So I think it's interesting how pretty much right before this happens, the moon will quincunx Neptune to 150 degrees. It will go into Virgo and then quincunx Pluto at 150 degrees. Therefore, creating this finger of God that is pointing towards the moon and Virgo, right? Now, what the hell does this mean? Well, there's going to be this sort of awkward exchange where we are starting to realize that reality is shifting. That's really what this comes down to. Now, Neptune is still in Pisces. So I think there's an element where we're realizing that we are still within the matrix, right? We are still within the matrix. Pluto is in Aquarius, which, yes, would like to have us looking towards the future and seeing what the age of Aquarius is really going to hold, but it's retrograde and it's looking back at Capricorn. It's looking back at the old world. It's looking back at the dilapidated buildings. It's looking back at all of the things that we want to just leave behind, but not actually have the responsibility of, doing something about it. Actually fixing things, remedying things, building things back up. This moon in Virgo brings the reality check that while the tide is indeed shifting, it's not going to shift immediately. It's not going to shift immediately. It's getting there. So I think this could provide some frustrations. So on the macro scale, you would see this as humanity realizing that we don't have to live life the way we've lived for the last 2,000 years, that we could do something different. In the micro, in the personal, this could be, let's just say that, you are wanting to get a promotion at work, right? But the process is taking a little bit longer. Maybe you're wanting to get a promotion at work, but then suddenly the position that you want to move into, that person's getting audited by somebody. They're doing like some sort of internal investigation to figure out, whatever, some other stuff, which could push things back. That's how this could play out in the personal. This can cause delays, this can cause frustrations, but this moon of Virgo is going to be very, very particular and looking at all the little details and trying to really poke holes in the argument. And I think that's what this is about. So that's how the week starts. Is the moon moving into Virgo, and everyone suddenly becomes a little bit more picky, a little bit more particular, wanting things to be in their right place, if you will. I think whenever the moon goes into Virgo, it's a good time to clean, because, like I said, emotionally, our emotions are going to be a little bit more ruled by, that day-to-day reality, our acts of service, and, the cleanliness of our space was very, very important whenever the moon goes into Virgo. So the truth of the matter is that Neptune and Pluto, which of course are on sextile aspecting each other, was like, well, yeah, we can move into this new world. But the reality of the matter is, especially with the moon on Regulus, which has now moved into Virgo, is the last of the 4 royal stars to move into its respective mutable sign. Everything else has shifted, right? Antares has shifted into Sag a long time ago. Fomalhaut has shifted into Pisces. Aldebaran has shifted into Gemini. Regulus, the heart of the lion, is the last thing to shift. So I think what this is that there is going to be, in many ways, a sort of shift, a change of heart in humanity. And we can see that the tide is turning, but we still have to answer to what we have done to each other and ourselves for the last 2,000 years. So no pressure. That's how the week starts. Now, this, of course, is just the icing of the cake, because the real big thing that you're probably going to feel a little bit more than this, especially considering the fact that this happens really in the middle of the night going into the day, so you're not really going to feel this as much. This will probably play out more like in your dreams and stuff, right? But the one that you're going to feel mostly is the fact that Mercury is going to be in square to Saturn at 19 degrees. Well, Mercury does rule communication. It's in Gemini. It's arguably the strongest planet right now. I would say that it's probably either Mercury or Neptune that's the strongest planet right now, feeling the best. And this is going to be in square to Saturn. And oh boy, do we want answers. Saturn is all about, structure and order. In Pisces, it definitely could bring about, trying to find structure in things that are otherwise mutable. It's like trying to pick up water and trying to make a shape out of it. You can't do that. So that's the kind of the weird thing about this. Now, with a Mercury that's going to be in square to this, things getting lost in communication, right? Slow things. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, internet is like really slow around this time. Maybe the day starts off a little bit slow, but the communication may be off. This is like a crazy game of telephone. Mercury squaring Saturn here at 19 degrees, right? And we also got to consider that this is the furthest that Saturn is going to go in Pisces. It's not going to go any further. It's going to stop here at 19 degrees and it's going to retrograde at this degree, right? Meanwhile, Mercury is going to blaze forward, it's going to pass the Sun, and it's going to pass Venus by the end of this week. So Mercury starts off behind the Sun and Venus, and it ends the week in front of it, and it will be in Cancer as well. And Venus will be in Cancer, right? So we're coming up on the summer solstice. So that's the thing we got to think about too. This square is going to provide a bit of a challenge, obviously, with our communication, with our thoughts. And like I said, if you are unable to find and that's the weird thing about this too. It's like I feel like some people may kind of lose their grasp a little bit on reality with this sort of transit like this, with this square, So, and I think a lot of it, like I said, Jupiter is now in Gemini, the Sun is here, Mercury is here, so there's a lot of energy in Gemini. There's a lot of focus on our thoughts. It's a very mental time. I don't mean mental as in crazy. I mean like mental as in, it's a very mental time. Like people are thinking a lot right now. A lot more right now, So the square to Saturn is going to provide like this sort of hard check. Now, Mercury is moving very, very fast. So if there are delays with communication or breakdowns, it shouldn't really last that long because Mercury is moving so fast. It's moving 2 degrees a day. So Mercury is very, very happy at how fast it's moving. Because we got to remember right now, as I said, like building up to it, Mercury, when it's in Gemini, this is when Mercury actually is writing and telling the story, if you will. Mercury's actually about to broadcast the story. Once Mercury goes into that final decan, that's when Mercury actually broadcasts the new message. So that's generally, we'll probably get some new information that starts to come out in like a day or so. Especially once Mercury catches up to the Sun, that's when information is going to come to light, right? So right now, Mercury is writing the story. It's actually, I would say, if anything, it's getting edited right now. It's in the second decan. So first decan is like a first copy. The second decan, it is, going through the revision stage. Then once it hits that third decan, which is ruled by Aquarius, that's the broadcast, if you will. So information is getting ready to be broadcasted. Information that's probably going to change all of our lives too. That's the thing. And when I say that, it's like sometimes people are expecting it to be some sort of big thing immediately, but it could be something that's subtle but can turn into something big too. That's the thing about it. And since this is a decan that's ruled by Uranus, this is going to probably come out of nowhere. It'd be one thing if Mercury and the Sun met in like the first decan or like the second decan. The fact that it's in the third decan, this is information that's going to blindside us and come out of nowhere. So this square to Saturn is going to be asking us, are you like mentally prepared for this? All right. So now, of course, we have that moon that's going to be traveling throughout Virgo. It's going to also trine Mars. That's like earlier in the day. It's going to square Jupiter as well. We'll see that. Now, this is an interesting aspect. Jupiter, we gotta remember, it is in detriment in Gemini, and well, it's actually in fall. Well, it doesn't like to be in Virgo either. I'd much rather be in its traditional home of Pisces. So Jupiter's kind of getting hit right now. So I think that's the weird thing. Is like we're trying to expand in these different areas, trying to learn how to be a big fish in a small pond because that's what Jupiter and Gemini is. It can be a little bit weird, and that Moon of Virgo is going to kind of bring a bit of a reality check, if you will. It's okay to feel a little bit uncomfortable and out of place, especially considering the degree that it's 4 degrees. 4 is the number of Aquarius. It is the number of Uranus, and this has a lot to do with people and what we belong to and who we vibe with. So don't be surprised if come around this time that the vibes are a bit off, that you feel a little bit off, and maybe the surroundings may even feel a little bit off. Some of you guys may realize that you are maybe even too big for the space that you're occupying. And then maybe you're going to be looking for like a way out, a way to try and change it up, do something different, if you will. But I think still this Jupiter and Gemini is going to be here for a while. So we have to almost learn how to, like I say, be a big fish in a small pond. That's really what it comes down to, So we have to learn how to adapt right now, especially with all this mutable energy. Jupiter, Mercury, the Sun, Venus, the Moon, Neptune, Saturn, all immutable energy. And then as far as fixed energy, we have Mars and Uranus and Pluto, right? And Pluto and Uranus are more subtle energies. So you're not going to feel those as much. Mars you feel more. And then in Cardinal, it's just Chiron. So in Chiron, like I said, could be much more subtle too. So there's so much more focus right now on the mutable. There's so much more focus right now on being adaptable and be able to, whatever situations come up, if things change, to sort of be able to adapt and kind of go with the flow. Find some way to move through these situations. It's the main thing with this. And of course, we'll see the Sun as well. It's going to also sextile Chiron. So I think Wednesday is kind of an interesting day where there are going to be pockets of, maybe the vibe is off. Maybe we're feeling a bit uncomfortable. But then also going to be these nice little pockets where, you know what? The cool thing about a moon trine Mars here is that, like, you know what? This is like when you're really gritty. Like Mars in Aries is like, Mars in Aries isn't really even Mars on the battlefield. Mars in Aries is like all the bravado before the battle. It's all the, we're going to do this. You're suiting up. You're getting your armor. You're getting your swords. You're getting your shields. That's when you're suiting up. When Mars goes into Taurus, that is like when Mars is actually in the battle, if you will. Right? And you got to remember, Mars is in detriment here. It doesn't like to be here. Much rather be in Scorpio. But this moon trining over to Mars is like, what the fact of the matter is that you are stronger than you give yourself credit for. But this is going to be a time that belongs to those with more grit. This is going to belong to people. This time is going to belong to those who have a little bit more grit. And it's not just all of the bravado that is Mars in Aries. Now, granted, this Mars in Aries didn't really have the bravado that it wanted to. Because it had to deal with the North Node. It had to deal with going through the space that Mercury retrograded. And it had to deal with Chiron as well. So it didn't even have the full strength, if you will. It's about taking those lessons, though, with the conjunction it made to Chiron. And when it's in Taurus, realize that this is going to be a battle that's not going to be won overnight. Now, that battle could be many different things, right? The battle can be like, this one should be won overnight, but if you have like that pile of laundry that's been sitting in that chair for a week, you just got to do it. But Mars and Taurus, this is the energy where we have to doing the work, taking the action is going to bring about the best results. And that's how you're going to feel better about yourself. That's how you're going to feel more valuable. You're going to feel more valuable right now by actually doing the thing. That's the reality of it. And this moon in Virgo, while it may be a little bit picky and stuff like that, at least it's trining this Mars. At least it's bringing about some harmonious energy to help get us through this moment. And it's like, you know what? Do the work. Do the thing. Yeah, it may be a little bit slow. Yeah, things may take time to build. But the reality is that if we commit to it and we do it, we can achieve some great things. So Wednesday's an interesting day where it's like you have, and like I said, Sun sextiling over to Chiron. This will help us as far as like, you know what, taking those lessons with the Chiron in Aries. And once again, it's 2 degrees, right? So it's 2 plus 2 is 4. So 2 plus 2, 4, 2 plus 2, 4. 4 degrees here with the moon squaring over to Jupiter. There's a lot of energy here about the vibe and how you fit in. You have to think about that. So with this Sun sextiling Chiron at the same time that the moon is squaring Jupiter, think about it. That means there are 2 aspects of ourselves, the Sun and Jupiter, that are kind of getting in the mind, that are kind of getting pulled in these different directions. So don't be surprised if you're kind of like this on Wednesday. You know what I mean? Kind of all over the place, trying to figure some things out. But like I said, at least we are being put in a position where we can really consider and really start to think, you know, it's like, you know what? I know that this thing happened and this thing happened and this thing happened, but I still do belong. I can still find my way. And you communicate that here through your actions. Like watching Divergent earlier, you know, the main character at one point was going to be kicked out of the faction that she chose. She said no. And how did she say no? With her actions. She didn't like say no to the person, like, you're out of the faction. And she said no. No, she said it no through her actions. They were about to leave her behind. She ran to the train and jumped on it. And the Chiron part there was the fact that she got her butt kicked like the day before. So she was hurt. She was injured. She was wounded. Wounded healer, Chiron, you know what I'm saying? But she overcame that. She learned from it and realized that, you know what, no one can tell me what to do. So I'm going to get up. I'm going to run. I'm going to catch this train, and I'm staying. So you have to kind of have that mindset here. So don't allow this energy, don't allow certain people or situations or whatever like that to try and kick you out of a place that you really do feel like you belong. Yeah, sure, it may not be easy. Moon square Jupiter, right? It may not feel easy. You may feel like you're out of your element here. And Jupiter's out of its element. Remember, Jupiter's fire. It's in air right now, right? So that's kind of the, and that's the weird thing about Jupiter is that Jupiter almost has to be a little bit more careful in Gemini, because if Jupiter gets too excited, it can create like an explosion. When you meet the fire with the air, it can proliferate. That's why Jupiter has to be a little bit more careful when it's in Gemini, right? It can be a great idea. It could be a great time to like birth new ideas and like kind of invoke your imagination, if you will. But it also can kind of just, it can get really big, really fast, and kind of intense. But it's interesting as far as like that way that Jupiter kind of plays out there. Jupiter is having to learn how to do what Mercury does, right? So Mercury's writing right now. So is Jupiter. But Jupiter is going to take a much longer time to write this story, for it to be edited, and then for it to be broadcasted once Jupiter goes into the final decan. It's going to take a little bit longer. So if Jupiter is writing right now and just getting the scope and talking to the people, if you will, there's definitely some frustration with that, right? Jupiter wants to get out there, wants to actually just have the big picture already done. But it can't quite do that right here, right now. I think Wednesday is going to be an interesting day. I'm definitely curious to see how we all navigate it. Now, moving into Thursday, I mean, even if you see this, like the moon, like I said, it's really just going to be making its way throughout this. You can see that Mercury is already at 20 degrees, so it's already coming off of the square to Saturn. That's how fast Mercury is moving. So by the time that we get to Thursday, we're going to start to see some other aspects. We're going to see Mercury, of course, about to hit 22 degrees, and it's going to actually make the sextile over to Chiron as well. So now the mind kind of catches up with the sun, like our heart and stuff like that. I think it's interesting that this pretty much is happening at the time, like really closely to the time that the moon is going to be in direct opposition to Saturn. So when the moon is opposing Saturn, Mercury is going to be in sextile to Chiron. So you see how this is adding up? You see how there are like multiple aspects that are pretty much happening at the same time when they're at the same degrees? It's pretty wild. It's pretty freaking wild, you know? So, I'm trying to see if, yeah. So, bam. Thursday, it's kind of like this just continuation of the same energy on Wednesday, where I think emotionally we're definitely wanting to have more of the facts. And Virgo is an alchemist, right? So it's wanting to take these situations and trying to learn how to adapt here. Opposing Saturn, though, the planet it naturally opposes in general, but they're immutable this time and not cardinal with Cancer and Capricorn respectively. This definitely is going to be kind of one of those checkpoints, if you will. Now, because the moon moves very, very fast, we won't feel this energy for too long, but it builds up throughout the day, and then it kind of apexes around 5 p.m. or so. So I think this is where we could potentially get a little bit emotionally frustrated with the reality of our situation, the reality of how things could be at this moment. In Saturn, we may feel restricted. We may feel restricted spiritually. We may feel restricted just, in general in our lives, We may feel like we're unable to kind of move out of the confines of our situations or our thought patterns, or we just feel like things just have to be this way. But the cool thing is that this Mercury that's going to be sextiling Chiron is like, it doesn't have to be this way. Sure, you may feel that way, and sure, you may come up with all these different reasons as to why. But it's like, are you going to play the pity game, the pity party? Are you going to play that game? Or are you going to realize that you can do more, and that this is not where it ends, right? This is not where it plateaus at, right? This is not, there's more beyond this, if you will. So I think Thursday, as far as like the energy, I don't think it's going to be like super intense energy. I think because like I said, a lot of it's just kind of building up to the rest of the week. I feel like honestly, Friday's probably the biggest day of this week, which we're about to get into, and then Sunday's also a pretty big day. So we universe it's kind of like back and forth. Like Wednesday, it's decently intense. Thursday kind of slacks off. Friday's pretty intense. Saturday slacks off. Sunday's decently intense, and then Monday it kind of like slacks off a little bit. So it's kind of like this back and forth yo-yo. So, and considering the fact that we are immutable energy, if you're not used to like learning how to navigate this current, by the end of the week you can be dizzy, because we'll get to Monday and Tuesday, we'll look back and be like, yo, what the freak happened? Like, what in the world happened? It's a crazy week. How do we break this spell? How do we break this spell? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how when we get into Friday, we get the first quarter square of the moon. The sun will be in square to the moon, while Mercury is beginning their cazimi as well. Mercury is going to be catching up to the sun, right? At 23 degrees. Now, this is interesting because Mercury rules Gemini, and it also rules Virgo, too. So there's an interesting reception here. The moon is pretty much neutral in these spots, I would say. And the sun hasn't really been having the greatest time in Gemini, to be fair. If you look at, like, the sheets I wonder if I could find those for you. See if I can. Let's see. Hold on. Properties. If I can get to the sheets. Let's see if it lets me. Oh, it didn't let me do it. Oh, there it is. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, so +10, +3, +2, +2, +1. So the sun actually reaches +1 finally, which is kind of nice. Mars is at -3 and Jupiter is at -4, right? So Mercury is definitely strong right now, right? So this is going to be a very interesting conjunction because Mercury is really going to be taking over and starting to lead the way here. You know, this moon in Virgo is looking for some reality checks, looking for some facts, but so is this Mercury and the Sun as well. It's looking to connect with individuals too, but like I said, these energies are getting ready to square Neptune. So I think that's very interesting. If you just, even if you look at like the speed too, let's look at the speed of the planets, right? See how fast Mercury is moving? It's like 2 degrees a day. Venus is moving fast too. And what's interesting is that they're both just barely out of declination. They're both just barely out of bounds. North, mind you. Just barely. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting too is that most of the planets are north, with the exception of, Saturn? Exception of course, Neptune. And then, of course, we have Pluto that are all south. So, what does that mean? Well, I would say, if anything, if they're like north of that celestial equator, if you will, it's like there's in many ways we're wanting to rise. We're wanting to rise to another plane, another level, but there's still things that we have to address with all this other energy. We still have to address this Saturn. We still have to address this Neptune. We still have to address this Pluto. That's why I was saying that, we want to break out of this spell, if you will. And I think it's sort of almost like we have to play along, because we can't fully break it just yet. We can't fully just break character just yet. We have to sort of play along, if you will. So that's going to require some ingenuity. It's going to require some smarts. It's going to require you to know how to be able to adapt and not be afraid as well. I think that's interesting. One of the other interesting things about this freaking movie, man, I'm learning so much about this movie with Divergent and stuff. One of the other interesting things is that one of the main characters had to teach the main character pretty much how to fly under the radar, because they were too good. They were too strong. They were moving through the challenges too easily. So the dude was like, no, I need to train you on how to actually perform worse so you can scoot by until we figure out a plan so we can, move forward, if you will. And that's probably why I would imagine that a lot of you guys probably feel that way. You probably feel like I don't necessarily vibe with this reality. I don't necessarily vibe with this matrix. I don't necessarily vibe with a lot of people. Well, there are people out there that you can vibe with. I think that's probably one of the challenges of this Gemini season, is trying to figure out who exactly we vibe with. And when Uranus comes into here, it's definitely going to make it even more so. Of course, like I said, Jupiter here. We've been all trying to figure out what our vibe is. I'm saying that word a lot today, vibe. But, we can't just give up on humanity either. And I think that's one of the spells right now that's being perpetuated, is people are giving up on humanity. And I'm like, no. The human spirit is something that is one of the most powerful forces in this world. And unfortunately, there are a lot of beings, entities, organizations that want to harness that power for selfish gain or for their own nefarious reasons, if you will. I don't know exactly who they are. I just know that they exist. If I'm being real. My job is just to bring you all the astrology and let you know that whenever they start to perform these spells and these rituals, that you won't fall under the influence of them. Maybe we have to play along, if you will, but you won't completely fall victim to them. But you'll be able to see around you people just falling for the spell after spell after spell. You'll be able to determine it. You'll be able to see it more. You'll be able to be like, okay, I see that. Skirt. So there's this element, like I said, where I feel like we're wanting to rise above, we're wanting to move to this other plane, but we can't quite move as fast as we want to right now. And I think that's the frustrating thing for a lot of people. When I think of Jupiter, I think of a rocket for some reason. When it's in Gemini, can't rocket off just yet. It just is what it is. So I'm going to bring it back to the... So this Friday we have that first quarter square, right? Now what's interesting too with this moon is that it does make a quincunx over to Chiron, and is also going to trine Uranus as well with this. Mercury is going to be conjuncting the Sun with this as well. As the day progresses, that moon is going to also square Venus, right? And as it even continues even more, we're going to see, as it continues even more, because that's all just like in the first part of the day, right? What happened to it? How come it's not showing? Oh, jeez. Sorry about that. That's all in the first part of the day. That's like before we wake up, essentially, is when all that happens. So, moon is going to square Mercury, Sun, Venus. Then it's going to oppose Neptune. And then it's going to enter into Libra. And then it's going to trine Jupiter. Right? And at the same time as trining Jupiter, it's going to be making a quincunx over to Mars. And Mars is also in an interesting aspect because it is actually, hold on, let me click on the right one. It's going to be actually in semi-square to Saturn. Now, I don't talk about semi-squares very often. It's a 45-degree angle. But the fact that the moon is making all of these major hits because of the whole party that's in Gemini, I think it's like we get hit with wave and wave and wave of the reality that we are in. And then when it moves into Libra, it's definitely going to be wanting to look for some sort of balance. Like, I feel like the first couple of days of this week, Wednesday and Thursday, like, people are going to be a bit all over the place and wanting solutions, and maybe things aren't coming as fast as they want. Maybe information isn't coming as fast as they want to. And they're going to just be like, there's an element of control here because Virgos are kind of control freaks. So, like, we're going to want to control situations, but we can't really control situations because of all this squaring energy, because the moon opposing Saturn, because the moon opposing Neptune and Pisces. This is about how can you adapt in these situations. How can you adapt in these situations? And like I said, Mars is also going to be in semi-square to Saturn. It's separating, but it's still there. It's at this point, it's still a 0-degree orb. So we're going to feel it, starting like Friday evening, going into Saturday morning. We're going to feel that semi-square. Now, semi-squares are generally a challenging aspect. That's not the most challenging. I think really what this comes down to, like I said, Mars in Taurus is all about grit. It's all about realizing that this is all of the bravado, all the stuff that Mars does while it's in Aries. When it gets into Taurus, it's like, all right, put your money where your mouth is. Those battle cries and everything. This is where you actually see who is here to tough it out for the long haul. That's what this whole thing is. And with the semi-square to Saturn here is definitely keying us in. It's like, you know what? This is a spiritual battle. This is a spiritual war. and that there are people, beings, and influences that want to control you. Just being real. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys. That's why I did this as breaking the spell. Right? If I'm thinking of a magician energy is definitely very Piscean. It can be Aquarius. It could be Sag as well, but it's definitely very Pisces. Now, a high magician, or like a magic order, like an order of magicians that, govern over whatever, that is very much so Saturn. That's very much so Saturn. So this Mars that's in semi-square to it, it's like Mars could be going rogue, if you will. And Saturn has to kind of like reel him back in. There's an element of that. And why do I say that? Well, considering the fact that during the time of this semi-square of Mars to Saturn, during this time of this, we have the moon that's also going to be quincunxing it. So you have the awkward stare, the 150-degree angle from the moon in Libra, which is looking for more fairness, more balance, maybe more compassion, trying to see both sides of the equation. But Mars is like, Mars has a mission, right? And this is also happening at the same time that the moon is going to be trining Jupiter. Like, I see this kind of energy, and it is a bit complex. I'm not going to lie. It's a bit complex. But it's one of those things where it's like you can feel like there's just uncomfortability within this whole chart. There's nothing that's really in a super comfortable place right now. Mars isn't very comfortable. Uranus isn't very comfortable. Jupiter isn't very comfortable. The sun kind of, sort of. Mercury's comfortable. But that's the mind. So if you're sound of mind, that's cool. You can navigate this. If you're not sound of mind, then it's going to be hard to navigate this. Venus, it's all right. Saturn, it's all right. Neptune's comfortable, but Neptune, like I said, it's more subtle. Same with Pluto. So if we're thinking about like some of the main energies that we probably feel, like more of the personal planets, like your Mercury, your Venus, your Mars, your Moon, your Sun, right? The energy is not super comfortable right now. So I think if you're looking for that, and you are obsessed with that, and you're obsessed with things looking a certain way, good luck. Good luck. This is a time about having a little bit more gusto, having a little bit more grit, right? And that's the weird thing about this too, this weird quincunx to Mars. Mars doesn't want to be where the moon is, because Mars, that's where its detriment is. It doesn't want to be in Libra. So that's the funny thing about this. It's like we can think in many ways that the grass may be greener on the other side. And if we get too emotionally wound up, if you will, especially with the South Node here, if we get too emotionally wound up in thinking that the grass may be greener on the other side, like we're sitting on this one scale and like, I'd rather go over to that scale, and they jump over there. Like, you just want to kind of be a little bit careful about that. Now, the trine to Jupiter is going to be kind of keying us in here, where it's going to be like, well, is there opportunities to expand here? Is there a story here, if you will? Or are you just trying to find some sort of excitement? If you kind of go into this Friday, especially this Friday evening, if you're going out, if you're just trying to look for some sort of excitement, just for the sake of excitement, because maybe things are a bit uncomfortable and you feel like, well, I just got to do something, then this could be a this is on this is the kind of chart where you like That one, like maybe normally you're very, very safe, right? I'm gonna just go ahead and fucking take it there, right? Because this is Mars, right? I'm gonna go ahead and take it there. Maybe you always practice safe sex when you go out, right? But this is the kind of energy where you get somebody pregnant. It's kind of energy where you get someone pregnant. You know, you're always safe, whatever like that. But things like, no, maybe I'll risk it this time. You know, just for the excitement, just because I want to feel something more. You know, mm, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm just saying that this is the kind of energy that would support that. Just saying. I don't know why I'm talking like this now. But this Friday, I feel like Friday is the day where the spells or the energy is a little bit on the higher side, right? I feel like this is the day where it is, maybe I would say it's being casted on Wednesday, and then Friday is sort of like when everyone's potentially in a bit of a zombie state, especially when the moon goes into Libra and then it conjuncts the south node, if you will, during all this. And with that Mars, that's a bit restless too. That's the thing. There's some restless energy here too, because it's like the actions that we're taking seem like they're yielding slow results. It's not happening immediately, you know. Even though we're thinking about it, we're wanting it and stuff like that. We're thinking about it a lot, but things are still just not happening at the pace and the speed that we want them to. That's okay. That's okay, but the question is like, well, will we accept that it's okay, if you will? Now, Friday, like I said, I feel like it's the day where the spell is going to be a little bit higher. Now, the way that you navigate this is, I feel like we honestly have to kind of lean on this Mars, not get too much into our emotions, but also realize that our actions are going to determine the things that we manifest right now. That's going to determine the things that we manifest right now. So I think Mars is a big key to all this, on how to get through this. I really do. Because even though we have all this energy in Gemini, it moved through it so fast. Mars was kind of late to the party. You know what I mean? Didn't quite, it wasn't there when Jupiter, the Sun, and Mercury, and Venus were there. And it's Uranus is still there. So it was like Mars got to the party, and the old man Uranus is just still just sitting in the rocking chair, whatever like that. And Mars like, oh shit, fuck, I wanted to party with everybody, and now it's just Uranus is here, you know. Uranus is just chilling, probably still drunk, singing karaoke by himself, whatever like that, with the very few people that vibe with his weird ass. And Mars is like, oh, this is not really a party anymore. But I think it's about finding the party and finding the cool things, and you know, the seemingly ordinary, maybe the seemingly mundane, and seeing the beauty in all that. I think that's really what it comes down to. Instead of feeling like it's always over there or the excitement's over there, kind of seeing the beauty of where things are right now. I think this is a time right now where we're going to start to see people, like I said, act on their values more. This is also going to be a time, like I said, Mars going to Taurus, people with sore throat, that's going to become more prevalent. Apparently whooping cough is going around right now. I did say something was going to happen with like the throat and all this sort of stuff and inflammation and stuff. So apparently whooping cough is going on right now. So, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more people with sore throats. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's just that time, you know? And that's really going to be coming down to whether or not you're actually communicating your value and your worth. But if you hold it back, if you stifle it, then you may find yourself having throat chakra issues. So, now, and Saturday, like I said, we kind of get a bit of a break, right? Kind of get a bit of a break. That moon is going to conjunct the south node, and it's going to oppose the north node here at 12 degrees. By this time, of course, Venus is getting so close to squaring Neptune. It's getting very close to square Neptune, but it's not going to quite get there, right? Saturday is a bit more of a chill day. I think, if anything, whenever the moon comes onto the nodes, these moments definitely feel a little bit more destined. if you will. They feel like the energy that happens around these times, it's like, you know, yeah, it does kind of give more destiny, more fate kind of energy. But whenever the moon's on the south node, people are going to be probably more so playing out that energy, especially emotionally. You know, trying to find balance and harmony in places where it may not exist, trying to connect in relationships that may actually have you out of your authenticity and not having you actually be who you really are. The positive thing, I guess, with this is that maybe you can be able to reach across the aisle and help somebody that may not be really like you or whatever like that, or they may be different than what you normally associate with. So there's an element here where we can kind of reach across the aisle and compromise and help other people, but the question is whether or not we are still being who we truly are, or if we're just really outsourcing who we are. It's also an element here too with Moon and Libra where people may give from a place where they may give from a place of lack. If they're feeling lack but they feel the need to give, then they're not really going to be of as much service as they think they will be. The Moon on South Node in Libra also, people can make really bad deals with this, you know. Libra's all about compromise and stuff like that. A lot of it's like Saturn exalts there, so it's about law and that sort of stuff. Moon on the South Node, people can make some pretty bad deals with this, potentially, you know. So it's interesting. I think Saturday will probably be a more chill day. We probably won't notice as much, but like I said, it's building up. Now, Sunday, on the other hand, we're going to see Venus hit that 29th degree, right? Boom. 29 degrees. Mercury has moved past the sun, leaving it in the dust. It's about to conjunct Venus. And now we have the square of Venus to Neptune at 29 degrees. Now, I was looking, I couldn't find when the last time that this happened. Now, Venus did square Neptune last year, but the energy was different. It was definitely different. I was trying to find, you know, when's the last time that Venus could have squared Neptune at this exact degree? And I couldn't really find it. I found some things that were close, where it happened at 27 degrees. So in 1859, it happened at 27 degrees, and in 1532, it happened at 27 degrees as well. Now, what's interesting about those, I think, is like the 1532 one was the one that I found that was interesting, or was it the 1859? Now, we're going to actually take a look at it. We're going to go ahead and take a look at it. So, we're going to go back in time. Back. Because a part of astrology is actually showing what happened before, because history tends to rhyme. It may not repeat, but it definitely rhymes. So 1859. Bam, look at that. 27 degrees that they squared right here, right? Now, what's different, obviously, here, Pluto was in Taurus at this time. Uranus was here. Oh, well, that's not the square. That's actually the sextile. Hold on, let me move it forward. Let me just move this forward to where they actually square each other. There it is. Now, what's different with this one is the fact that Neptune was actually retrograde during this one. So that's actually different, you know. So Chiron was in Aquarius. We had this square with Neptune and Venus here at 27 degrees. Uranus was in Gemini. Pluto was in Taurus. Mars and the Sun were with each other in Cancer, and Jupiter was here as well, right? And yeah, the nodes which were in Aquarius and Leo. So quite different energy as far as this goes. Now, I want to go back even further, though. I'm going to go back even further. I'm going to go back to 1532. And actually, I'm going to change this to 5 years. That way. Okay, boom. This was the one that I found to be interesting. Alright, so 1532. Let's go back a month or so. Let's go back. See, in this one, Neptune was actually direct. Now, the reason why I like this one more, with this Venus square Neptune, is that Chiron was in Aries, and Pluto is, oh my goodness, it's at 1 degree of Aquarius where it is right now. So when I'm looking at astrology and when I'm looking at transits and I'm looking in the past as when these things happened, I'm looking for things like that. I'm looking for how similar was the energy to right now. So the fact that this right here, that Chiron was in Aries, and the fact that Pluto was at the same degree of Aquarius as it is right now, lets me know that there's something to this energy. Now, when I was looking up 1532, some of the things I was seeing, different things, like different geopolitical things that were happening in Europe. It was like, I think it was like King Henry VIII was making some sort of deal, and then against, I guess, the Holy Roman Emperor, and that there was other things that was happening within the Holy Roman Emperor where different groups were kind of coming together and making peace treaties and stuff like that. It was kind of interesting, but it was like different peace treaties were being made and all kinds of stuff. In fact, we can just go ahead and I can just bring it up. So let's see. 1532 important events. Let's see if it. Let's see. What happened? 1532. Because there's some interesting things that did happen here. So let me take that off, and then I'm going to. Oh wait, no. I just wanted to change the property. Do you want to discard? Okay. Let's see. Okay, cool. I wonder if it will let me do what I wanted to do. Okay, cool. Let's see. All right, let's see. May 16th, Thomas More reigns as Lord Chancellor of England. Anglo-France alliance, treaty of closer amity with France, and the Pomeroy Treaty signed between King Henry VIII of England and King Francis I of France against the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Peace of Nuremberg, July 23rd. Emperor Charles V and the whatever league signed a Peace of Nuremberg. Let's see. November 15th, Pope Clement VII tells England's King Henry VIII to end relationship with Anna Boleyn. Or here we got this. November 16th, Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro captures the Incan emperor after a surprise ambush. So I like, these are the kind of things that you kind of want to pay attention to, right? Especially with all this weird geopolitical stuff and everything like that. Like I said, Pluto going, the fact that it was retrograde at that time, also going back into Capricorn. At least I think it went back into Capricorn. So it's like, yeah, there's an element of like ready to move into sort of like this new world, but different things happen. Alliances shifted and changed and stuff. And yeah. Look, English Parliament bans payments by English Church to Rome. March 18th, right? So you don't think that that wouldn't cause like some craziness, stuff like that? And Pisces is very much so spirituality. It's very much so religion. So you can see that that was happening too. It's pretty interesting. What about birthdays? Was there anything interesting that happened here? Italian composer and classical scholar. I don't know if there's like really mainly any deaths, because like I said, this is kind of pretty like early and stuff like that. But yeah, you can see that there's some interesting stuff that was happening in 1532, right? May 16, Thomas More resigns as Lord Chancellor of England. May 16th, that's really close to the date that we're looking at. It's like 10 days after. It's 10 days after this particular day that I was looking at when Venus squared Neptune, which was May 6th, right? Maybe we see a resignation of, you know, a prominent political figure. Maybe we see that. And maybe, maybe the decision is made around this time, but maybe we see the resignation, sometime later, maybe like a week later, maybe we see that. Who knows how that's going to have implications on the larger scale of things. Different treaties being signed against other people. And then, of course, within his own, if we actually looked up, the league, whatever like that, because I did look it up. This was like within the Holy Roman Empire itself. There was like a piece of Nuremberg. So there was like different sections, I guess, of the Holy Roman Empire that were coming together and were making peace, if you will. So now it'd be interesting to see like if there was anything that happened like the following year, because I kind of want to look at that now. I kind of want to look at 1533, because if all that stuff's happening, is there any major events that happened? Let's see. Well, Anne Boleyn was crowned Queen of England June 1st, right? Ferdinand of Austria and Ottoman signed the peace treaty in Constantinople. Well, boom. July 11th, Pope Clement VII excommunicates England's King Henry VIII. So there's excommunication. So there's obviously issues going on with that. Excommunications. July 26th, Francisco Pizarro orders the death of the last Sapa Inca emperor. So you have different battles in other parts of the world that are happening too. He captured Cusco, November 15th. So yeah, 1534. And you're probably wondering, like, why in the world are you doing this, Jay? It's like, because I'm trying to show you that, like I said, history rhymes. You can already see a lot of crazy stuff that's happening right now. Freaking Macron in France, freaking suspending the parliament, essentially, and they're holding, like, these very quick elections. We can see that there's all this upheaval in Europe right now and stuff. And a lot of these aspects are kind of the same. And there's a religious aspect to this because this is Pisces, right? This is still Pisces. And a lot of it's probably going to have to do with a lot of the weird different relationships. Venus's relationships, this is in Gemini. So a lot of this could be a lot of very interpersonal relationships that may have larger implications on the masses, if you will. This could be... We may hear about mistresses. We may hear about, the children of different mistresses, of different political leaders and presidents and stuff like that may start coming out and start claiming that maybe it's their right to the throne or whatever like that, or wanting different inheritances. This is the kind of energy that's where we are right now. So don't be surprised, like I said, if you start to see some of this weird stuff that comes up, right? So let's see. April 15, Thomas Cromwell is appointed chief secretary to King Henry VIII of England. April 17, Thomas More confined in the Tower of London. Thomas More was a very famous philosopher, right? So this is it's kind of interesting too. As far as like philosophers, people who think outside the box and stuff like that, would not be surprised if there's like a crackdown on that. April 20, 420 Blazer, French explorer Jacques Cartier sets sail with 2 ships from Saint Malo to Newfoundland, looking for gold and for riches, right? King Christian III is elected King of Denmark and Norway in the town of Rye. Charles V names George von Egmond as Bishop of Utrecht. Acts of Supremacy, November 3rd. English Parliament passes the Act of Supremacy, making Henry VIII and all subsequent monarchs the head of the Church of England. This is a big one. This is a big one, guys. That is a big one. English Parliament passes the Act of Supremacy. Damn, the Act of Supremacy, making Henry VIII and all subsequent monarchs the head of the Church of England. Wild. I would not be surprised if we actually see a new church pop up. which will be sort of like a last-ditch effort Hail Mary, I think, anyways. So, now, back to the astrology. So, now, like I said, that was all 1532. So, let's go back to Sunday, right? Move this back an hour. And, how come it's not showing? There it is. Okay, cool. Good deal, good deal. So, like I said, we have the Venus that's squaring Neptune. We have the moon that opposes Chiron on that day. We also have Mercury that's going to be squaring Neptune at the same time. So, you know, all this happening on Sunday. I think it's interesting. We've been getting a lot of intense energies on Sunday. We've been getting a lot of like major transits on Sunday. And the fact that it's happening at 29 degrees, which is the last degree, it makes it much more edgy. So especially with the Mercury having already conjuncted the Sun and it meeting up with Venus and is squaring Neptune, this is, like I said, I would not be surprised if somehow we hear about a mistress or a kid that was estranged from the family in some sort of way. Would not be surprised if we see something like that, especially with Venus and Mercury getting ready to move into Cancer. Really would not be surprised if we see something like that. Some interesting information coming out, you know. And with that moon there in Libra too, it's getting ready to move into Scorpio, right? So this moon is actually, you know, trining the sun, right? It's going to trine the sun, and I don't even think it's going to get a chance to trine Venus and Mercury while it is in Libra. Pretty sure it'll be when the moon will trine while it's in Scorpio, which leads me to believe even more so that we may see some secrets come to light, because Scorpio is all about secrets, right? So, whew, yeah, the moon will hit 29 degrees and it will begin to trine them. It's so close. It's so close. It's insane how close it is. And it's also quincunxing Neptune. So we're all going to be feeling very, very awkward about the reality that's being revealed. And like I said, because it's Pisces though, there could be a sort of like spell that's put on people, and might be like in this weird like miasma too. Pisces is a miasma. It's like that floating mist that can cause some sort of like weird, you know, ailment or whatever like that. You see those typically in like fantasy type settings, whatever like that. But it's like that floating mist. It's like, what is this stuff? Like that's what Neptune at the end of Pisces is doing. We are in a miasma, if you will, trying to navigate. It's like the heaviest the fog could get. It's a super heavy fog, right? I want to see just how close this thing gets. I really do. Oh no, see, bam. I had a feeling. Y'all saw that shift, how Venus moved into Cancer? So it won't happen exact until that moment. Boom. 0-0. Whoo! The moon trining Venus at 0 degrees on Monday. Yeah, you can't make this up. Excuse me. Yeah, trining. That's a square. Trining. Yeah. So it trines Venus, trines Mercury. It's also going to oppose Mars on this day. So, oh, did I move it forward a month? Oops. Jeez. I did not mean to do that. I meant to move forward a day. No, not a day. Hour. Look at me. Look at me. So this is kind of an interesting one. Like I said, I think this week it comes down to Mars, because we're going to have to really rely on that grit of our character, because this is actually a mutual reception. The moon, it falls in Scorpio. You know, Mars doesn't like to be in Taurus. They much rather flip positions, right? They much rather flip positions. So, and by this time, Mercury has conjuncted Venus and has moved off in its getting ready to move off of Venus and, move to that first degree of Cancer. So there's, like I said, we're going to be kind of thrust into this weird energy where now things get suddenly very watery out of nowhere. We suddenly go from air, shout out to Dolo the Pilot Man. We suddenly go from air to all of this water energy out of nowhere. Venus, Mercury, and the moon, all within hours of each other, minutes, some. And that's going to be a major shift. So, especially with Mercury, could be mood swings. On Monday, you may find yourself just like mad mood swings. It's gonna feel like a Monday. I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna feel like a Monday. But this moon here, like I said, is going to want to, it's definitely going to want to find some sort of secrets, if you will. This moon's going to be like trying to uncover different things. It's wanting to feel secure in a sense, but it might not necessarily know how to, express that emotion. It may come off as too harsh. It may come off as too icy. It may come off as too hot, especially with Mars here that it's opposing. The emotions could come off as too hot or too icy on this kind of day. It could come off as very, very intense. That Mars, ironically, in Taurus, is going to help to ground our emotions. Kind of remind the moon, is like, hey, look. I know I'd rather be over there, and you'd rather be over here. But you move the fastest. Well, this is Mars talking to the moon. Look, you move the fastest right now, okay? You're the fastest moving energy, right? Like, just calm down, relax, try and think things through. Let's come up with a game plan. Like, Mars is going to be the logical one here, right? Mars usually just wants to act on impulse and just do things. But with this whole Mars freaking opposing the moon while Mercury and Venus move into Cancer and things get much more watery and much more emotional and stuff, and everyone's more in their feels, Mars is going to be like, hey, look at me, hey. Like, that's what Mars is going to be doing. Like, chill, relax. Things aren't going to happen immediately, right? We can still build, I think this moon is going to have, it's interesting too now, because now this moon in Scorpio is dispositing this Mercury and this Venus, meaning that it has some influence over those energies. And if we look at the sheets even, and you will see it, I'll show you the sheets at this moment, and you'll be like, oh snap. And I'm like, oh yeah, exactly. Look at that. Venus will be feeling good because it actually likes to be in Cancer. But man, +6, +1, -3, -4, -4, -5, -5, right? Mercury goes for feeling on the top of the world to -5. Probably because now that it's put the story out there and broadcasted it, now everyone's talking about how they feel about that shit, And Mercury is a little bit more drowned out, if you will. People are going to be talking more from their emotions at this point, So I think it's interesting how Monday, the energy, it makes this major shift, and you're going to feel things go from the more mental space to the more feeling space, right? And this happens, like I said, with this moon going into Scorpio. So I was like, oh, crap. So we're going to feel it much more intensely. And with the moon opposing Mars, yeah, you may feel like you need to take some sort of impulsive action. But Mars is anything but impulsive right now. Especially at -3, Mars is anything but impulsive right now. So doing something impulsive just for the sake of changing it, just so you can feel a little bit better, or so you can feel some sort of excitement, is probably not going to yield the results that you want. Probably not. I think it's about slowing down, seeing the bigger picture if we can, realizing, what we do have, what we can change, what we can do, being grateful for those things, and moving forward. That's really what this comes down to. This whole week, I feel like there are going to be these different opportunities for us to be put under different spells. And I think we do this to ourselves. People could do this to us, but there are going to be opportunities also to break the spell. I think a lot of it comes back to Mars. Even though Mars is -3, I think a lot of it is going to come back to Mars. I don't know why, but something's just telling me about that. I'll draw a card too, because something's just telling me. Well, interesting enough, I have the universe. I have the universe card. It was in reverse too. It's in reverse. So I think this is about like, whether or not we can trust the universe when we are feeling upside down. Whether or not we can trust that things are going to work out, even if it's not going exactly the way that we want. I'll draw another card too. Well, I have the Prince of Wands. This is very Mars-like energy. Yes. The Prince of Wands. I can't remember exactly what placement this is. Something's telling me that it's Mars in Leo. That's the kind of the energy I'm getting off of it. So, and that's the thing about this too. It's like, yeah, maybe we want to be the King of Wands, but right now we're the Prince of Wands, And I think that's okay. Like, we're still learning, but we can have the courage to move forward. Look how ferocious this lion looks. This lion looks gnarly as hell, right? It looks gnarly as hell. But I think that's really what this comes down to. We have to have the grit to be able to move through this. We can't be afraid to show our strength, show our muscles, show our grit, show our teeth. We can't be afraid to do that, So, anyways, let me go back to... I hope this is making sense. I hope that you guys are able to digest this. I know it's... admittedly, I've been studying astrology for a while. When I was looking at the energy for this week, I'm like, this is kind of a complicated week. I'm not even gonna lie. It's kind of a complicated week. That's why I keep saying, it's like, I think the best way to get through a week like this is to kind of take things back to the simple. You kind of have to get into the Mars Taurus energy, because with all those energies starting to square Neptune, with Mercury, which will do it, and Venus, and the Sun, which is going to come into its square with Neptune, it can make things very confusing. So we have to find a place to kind of get grounded, and there's not really a lot of footing for that. That's why I feel like Mars and Taurus is probably like your best friend right now. I really do feel that way. So now, Monday, we're going to see both those energies move into Cancer. That moon is going to continue throughout Scorpio, right? And then coming into Tuesday, really, you're not really seeing a whole lot, I think we'll really see, that moon is going to trine over to Saturn, earlier in the day at 19 degrees. So we'll see that energy. It'll also start to oppose Uranus, although that's probably going to be coming more into Wednesday. We'll see the moon also make a quincunx over to Chiron. Like I said, these are like pretty fast-moving energies, so you're not really going to feel these as much. But as the moon's going throughout Scorpio, like I said, it's going to be this time where emotionally, we want to be a little bit more impulsive, and emotionally, it might be a little bit harder to express our emotions because the moon has difficulty expressing itself in Scorpio, because sometimes the emotions can be very, very intense and may not be very, very well received, right? So I think we have to just sort of, take that into consideration. At least we do get a nice trine to Saturn here in the middle of the day on Tuesday, or like the early evening, if you will. So there could be a way to sort of bring some structure to this, if you will, and have it fit into the greater scope of things. Teamwork makes the dream work, and when we can bring all of our gifts together, with that Piscean energy, we can make some pretty cool things happen, But I feel like this week is sort of like a bit of a roller coaster, admittedly. And I think there are going to be moments, like I said, throughout the week where we can break out of the spell, if you will. But I think it's like, what is the spell? Is the spell something that you've done to yourself? Is it an idea? Is it a thought pattern that you've had? Have you always told yourself, I am this way, therefore it always will be? That's a spell that you put onto yourself. This doesn't necessarily have to be some sort of like, diabolical evil plan that has been perpetuated by people with billions of dollars. Because not every billionaire is evil, what I'm saying? Some of them are, but not all of them are. But this could be as simple as you telling yourself that maybe you subconsciously are always telling yourself that, you're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. This is an opportunity this week to break that spell. It's an opportunity for you to break that spell this week. Let me draw some more cards for everybody, too. Like I said, I feel like Mars is going to be your friend this week. I really do. Something's just calling me to that. I don't know why, but I just feel like Mars is going to help us to stay grounded in a time that things are going to get a little bit trippier as the week goes on. As these energies start to square Neptune, it's going to get trippier and trippier and trippier, trippier and trippier. If you're not used to that, don't lose your mind throughout this. Don't lose your mind throughout this. Learn how to adapt. But just be prepared for some trippy news and information to start dropping. That will blow your freaking mind. Don't be surprised. What do we got for the cards for everybody? I have the moon. I have the moon card here. And I have that moon card followed by the Nine of Cups. This is what I'm saying. Like, this is like, you have to feel your worth. You have to feel, this is all about like, because like, this is like the emotion, stuff like that too. It's like, I think some people maybe just don't necessarily feel happy. They don't feel fortunate. What I like about this card is that it has the little tickets, those little strings attached to the bamboo. So like what that means culturally is that those are wishes. You know what I'm saying? Those are wishes. Now it's like, do you believe that your wishes are going to come true? You know what I'm saying? But you have to follow these up with actions. But this is an individual that's like, they're feeling abundant. They know their worth. They know they know their value. They know what they bring to the table. So now it's time for them to celebrate in that. Some people can't. It's like whether or not you can actually feel into this energy and feel that you are worthy of that is really the whole key to this week. You know. Now I'm gonna cut the deck and get another card here. I have the Seven of Cups. I think that's the bewildering part, is that there's so many things that you probably could do. And maybe that's where the fog comes in. Maybe that's where the miasma comes in, because there are so many different options, you know. We have that followed by art. This is temperance. So, yeah, alchemy, essentially. You know, patience here. This is also about patience in many ways. So, like I said, being able to take certain situations and transform them and move them, we move from a lot of this mutable energy, and then we get a blast of cardinal energy and fixed energy, you know, towards the end of the week. You know, so just take that into consideration. You know, bottom of the deck for one more card I do have is the Four of Cups in reverse. I think there's an element where we're all kind of biding our time and kind of just waiting to see what's being presented to us. Being that it is in reverse, it's like I feel like the universe could be offering us some great things this week, but maybe we feel like we're unworthy of it, you know. But you are actually worthy of so much. There's so much abundance that could be coming into your life with the Seven of Cups energy too. There are cups all over this. We literally have cups here, Seven of Cups, Nine of Cups, Four of Cups in reverse, and then even in the art card, we have the Two Cups that this Catwoman is using. And even the moon, while there's no cups, the moon is associated with Cancer, which is a water element, right? So this week is many ways you're going to see this shift from the mental to the feeling, to the emotional, you know? And how are you going to be able to navigate that? It's like the universe is going to give us all this information and show us all these things, and it's going to be like, how do you feel about it? I think most people are going to be feeling kind of ambivalent with this Four of Cups in reverse. Right? They're going to be feeling a little bit ambivalent. Some people are going to feel like they're just kind of hanging there. It's like whether or not they could trust the universe with the Hangman, right? I'm going to draw one more card. I have the Prince of Swords. So, I think this is, in many ways, it's like, you know, how can we take that new information and how can we run with it? How can we move forward? And it's interesting, too, with this Prince of Swords, there is a cup on the Chariot, right? There is a cup on the Chariot. So things are about to get emotional. Things are about to get much more feeling. Are you prepared for that? I think, like I said, this comes down to, you know, how do we break the spell? Well, and that's really up to you. But I think we all have been kind of telling ourselves ourselves different stories and different ideas about who we are and what we can be and what we can do. These are the spells, especially if they are to our detriment, especially if they're holding us back and not having us realize the abundance that is here, that we could be anything that we really want to be, that we can transform and transmute these situations, and though it does require some patience, we can make it happen. And we can really turn the tables this week. So that's going to do it for your Cosmic Convergence this week. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I trust that this message will assist you on your journey this week. If you did enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I definitely appreciate it. And be sure to, of course, check out my new daily videos. It's like a daily tarot card reading that I'll be doing. So I'm probably going to film that pretty much right after this, so I can go ahead and post the one for Wednesday. But anyways, that's what I have for you all today. Y'all take care, stay blessed, have a wonderful week, beloved. I'll see y'all on the next Cosmic Convergence. Peace.